Hey, babe, and welcome to the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. This is the place to talk about how we're ditching our bad habits, long-held patterns, and limiting beliefs. The time is now to stop outsourcing and start insourcing our happiness and bliss. Am I right? I'm Heather Lowe, your empowering life coach, ready to guide you on this incredible journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and freedom. If you're feeling stuck in the cycle and wondering what life could look like if you liberated yourself, well, I've got something just for you. I created a free guide to help you take those first empowering steps towards a healthier and more fulfilling life, the one that you desire. This guide is packed with practical tools, mindset shifts, journal prompts that dig deep, and real-life insights to support you in making changes that truly stick. So if you're ready to explore what's possible, head over to ditchthedrink.com and grab your free guide today. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. And if you want a group of babes to journey with, I've got you there too. We're staying connected through the Ditch the Drink Insider app with private forums, weekly group calls, master classes, live workshops, book clubs, in real life events, and more. And the best part is you can join for free with a 7-day trial. I'd love to continue the conversation on the inside. Now, let's dive into today's episode and get inspired to create the life you deserve, like so many other babes are doing right now. Here we go. Hello, Angie Chaplin. Welcome to the Peripatia Podcast. And what I should say is welcome back, because in full transparency, we've already recorded an episode that has gone missing. So we are back again to do this again, second time, even better. Exactly. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. I am even more glad to be here this time. Not that I wasn't last time, but second time. It's thrilling to be talking with you.
Yeah, second round. It's kind of cool because I know more about your story this time than I did last time. And there was a lot of pieces about it that I didn't know, so I didn't touch on. And this time we can. Plus, you have some new and exciting things happening that we will also get to. So universe always works in our favor, and glad to be back again. Can we start? Will you share a little bit about your personal journey into leadership and what pivotal moment shaped your path?
Sure. My introduction to leadership academically really started when I went to graduate school in the mid-2000s. And I was a working professional. I was a human resources director at the time for a statewide nonprofit here in Iowa, and had the fortune of working for a very visionary CEO. And about that time, so again, 25-ish years ago, we were seeing a leadership deficit within the nonprofit sector, where some of the generation that was retiring was lacking bench strength to kind of step up and replace those individuals in leadership positions. And she saw this and challenged me to create a leadership academy. At the time, I had no idea what she was talking about, but I had learned to just smile and nod and assume that somehow I would figure out what the heck she was talking about. And then shortly thereafter came the graduate school opportunity. And the very first class in this 2-year curriculum was the Leadership Challenge by Kouzes and Posner. And I had never heard of the book, just like most graduate school textbook, because it's like, oh, I have to do the reading and all this. And literally, now that I have a wonderful relationship with the authors, I will tell them that they had me at page 1. Mm-hmm. And without getting into the content from that page 1, it really introduced me to the realities that leadership is both facts and feelings. And up until that point, I had really operated under the assumption, and perhaps by the examples of others, that who you were as a leader was very different from who you were in life. right?
Mm.
When you were leading at work, you were strong, you were assertive in some capacities, you didn't have feelings. It was just, all business all the time. And the wonderful thing about the leadership challenge is that it not only made it okay to express feelings, it literally became the textbook for how I would lead myself out of near deadly health crises later on in life. I didn't know that at the time, but there was a reason that it resonated with me. And the 5 practices that are the premise of the book literally became a roadmap for how I lead my life today.
Wow, that's so powerful. So I hear you. Back in the day, I mean, don't bring your problems to work,
Yep.
leave your home at home, right? Leave
Yep.
them at the door is the sort of
Exactly.
philosophy that was. You're saying leadership is both facts and feelings. That's very interesting to me because I would challenge it, not that I believe this, but what I was taught or what it was is that leadership is position.
Exactly. And that is one of the key fundamentals of the framework of the 5 practices is that leaders exist at every level of an organization, that it is not by position, it is not by title, it is not by who occupies the top box on an organizational chart. It's not the person with the longest title or the corner office. That leadership is available to anyone with the courage to accept it. And so there's an accountability piece that's built into it as well, that yes, we have this opportunity, we have this invitation to lead. And some choose to take advantage of it and learn from it and implement it. And some choose not to. And both approaches are okay as long as it's the individual making the right choice for the right reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about not only like leadership, the C-suite in a corporate environment, but what you're really talking about and what I want to know more about is your personal journey and leadership evolution in the way of what I know you call self-empowered leadership.
Correct. Yes.
So that's a different thing than I have the highest position on this org
Yeah.
chart, right? So what does self-empowered leadership mean to you?
To me, it means accepting both the responsibility and the invitation to lead, right? And that means I accept the need to do my inner journey. Because if we are seeking to be the best person in a traditional leadership capacity, whether that's leading our family, leading a community, leading a volunteer group, leading a sports team, leading in all the ways.
Leading the Iowa Hawkeyes, we all know
Yeah,
you're
exactly. leading in really a universal context, it's a choice. And there's an inner journey. We have to know how to lead ourselves before we can effectively lead other people. And
Okay,
many times that's a paradigm shift, right? For a lot of people that, I'm fine. And their ego system is what's telling them they're fine. But through the leadership challenge, especially the work with self-empowered, we start to see leadership as an ecosystem. And as an ecosystem, it means that everyone has an opportunity to give and receive on an equal level.
Yeah, and what we know now is leaders aren't necessarily just the people that have it all together. Leaders have had their own struggles,
Yep.
and the more vulnerable they can be about that, the more they can raise up the people around them, right?
Yeah. And you and I are both fans of Brene Brown, and there's a lot of the courage building and the bravery and, the model around really that you can have fear and be courageous, that sometimes bravery is disguised as fear and vice versa. It's really that vulnerability that I think Brené's work made it okay to talk about and okay for leaders to kind of feel their way through some of that awkward stuff when it comes to, like you said, keeping the home at home and just bringing the work stuff to work. And there's some evolution that needs to take place there. on an inner level as well as an outer level when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, to be our whole selves.
Right.
I would say too, regarding courage and bravery, if it didn't scare you, it wasn't that brave. It's not really brave to do something that doesn't scare you at all. So it should push you a little. That is exactly what gives you your bravery, is to do something that does scare you. So
Exactly.
if leadership is accepting the invitation and accepting the responsibility in your life, when did you recognize the invitation? Was it when you were asked to start this project and look into leadership? That was your invitation?
It's interesting because it's come in different ways. And after I graduated from graduate school, I was invited by Seton Hall to return as a faculty member. So that was one invitation that I said yes to, and that really instilled in me this eagerness to keep learning and to keep growing. So within the Leadership Challenge curriculum, there's training pathways, much like other programs or models, where you become a facilitator and then you get certified and then you continue to advance through levels of certification. And I started that process of adding to my own library of learning experiences with the authors and with the Leadership Challenge community, and ultimately achieved the highest level of certified master. So I've got now 20 some years of working not exclusively, working primarily with the Leadership Challenge, because there's other work that I do that I bring in. So the invitations kind of happened along the way. There was a 10-year period where that stopped, where that stalled. And that was what I refer to as my dark decade. And in 2010, I faced multiple crises that I did not know how to deal with. Even as I was learning about leaders having facts and feelings, I wasn't learning how to deal with those feelings. Mm-hmm. So it was cool to have them. But when I was growing up, families didn't talk about emotions or what to do when got big feelings and how to deal with them. And so I had lost the job at the nonprofit that I loved dearly because of a transition at the CEO level. So there was that. My marriage was facing difficulties. That was number 2. Number 3 was the death of a close friend. And so that perfect storm really collided, and not having healthy coping skills led me to do what seemed to be the norm, and that was use alcohol to start numbing and escaping. And that led to a rapidly downhill spiraling crisis of multiple hospitalizations, spending time in intensive care, a suicide attempt, health crises that required just a lot of medical intervention. And from that start in 2010 to 2020 was really when not only did I lose sight of leadership, I lost sight of myself. And the 5th and final hospitalization in 2020 finally allowed me to have a glimpse of where I had suppressed all of those leadership skills and studies and understanding. And that was really the rebirth of self-empowered leadership. This time, not leading in a traditional sense, but leading myself further away from unhealthy and life-threatening toxic behaviors.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your dark decade. And that's a long time to be in the dark, to feel like you're in a dark hole, and you had multiple things going wrong and working against you, and sadness and grief of a lot of things, it sounds like, during that time. Was alcohol, were you a regular drinker before this and then it just increased, or had it always kind of been there? Where were your
No, it really wasn't
before?
there. I would say I was a normal. I did not drink in high school. I didn't drink at all until I entered college. And even in college, I would say at that time, a normal drinker, not all the time, only on the weekend. I mean, just your regular college student. And it really wasn't until probably my mid to late 40s that just as a part of normal socializing, I'd have a glass of wine or, a beer here and there, but it did not become problematic until it wasn't just a glass of wine or a beer. It was bottles of wine by myself, cases of beer by myself, it was a snowball.
Completely. It was not really part of your life, but then during tough times, it escalated pretty quickly.
Yes, escalated.
It became your only coping mechanism. It sounds like. What were your coping mechanisms prior to that?
Prior to that, I was active physically. I was a runner. I did destination marathons as a charity athlete. So I had healthy outlets, right? Mm-hmm. And yet when life gets in the way and we're a busy professional and a busy mom and we're not managing our emotions, all that, it just festers. And it seems like, I don't have the energy. I don't want to do the healthy things. I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist and just numb away these feelings because I don't know what to do with them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you would say to yourself at that time? Like, I don't want to feel this. Like, I'm not supposed to feel this. Like, get over it. Or
the biggest emotion that I identify with or can pull out of those times was self-hatred, was this loathing for who I had become. And there was that cognitive dissonance, right? Where I knew what a leader was. I taught people what leaders were. I taught these things. And so rooted in that was then, of course, the shame and the guilt. And, when you don't have a high self-esteem to begin with, all those things just,
right,
fuel to the fire. And it just becomes this hatred for who I thought I was. And not knowing what to do about that.
So you feel a little bit like a fraud, a little like an imposter. This is what I'm teaching, or this is what I'm learning. This is what I believe in, what I should be doing, but this is what I'm actually doing. So there's that cognitive dissonance. And then also you lost your job. That's probably all your fault. You're losing your marriage. That's probably all your fault, right? So a lot of blame there and a lot of shame.
Yes.
And I mean, alcohol is so fast and resourceful to numb, ignore, stuff down. I mean, I always think, I always want to say, well, that was clever that you found that because it's pretty resourceful and it works before it doesn't. It works real fast, real temporary, and overall it's going to bring you down. And it sounds like you already had some mental health challenges, perhaps.
Yes.
This exacerbated that, as we know that alcohol does. If you're feeling anxious and depressed, you're going to feel a whole lot more of that when you pour alcohol on it, right?
Right. And in hindsight, of course, and mental health treatment and seeking brain health, there still is a stigma to this day around those things. We're making progress. And certainly, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, that just wasn't, around 2010, 2015, we weren't really talking about things like that. When I would go through like a medical episode, the first was acute pancreatitis, which I was told, actually, I was led to, I did not know, and this is again, just me maybe blocking it out. I did not know that
blacking it out.
Yeah, both. Yeah. I did not know that literally acute pancreatitis was caused by alcohol. I mean, cognitively, right? You would think, well, duh. But of course, I didn't want to know that. So right. I just thought, I'm in the hospital for acute pancreatitis. It wasn't made clear to me, or I chose not to understand how alcohol was the cause of the acute pancreatitis. So that was kind of when the medical situations would start. And then then I would think, well, of course, I'm drinking too much wine. It's the wine. It's not me. It's the wine. And
Mm-hmm.
so then you switch to a different substance, and then I drink beer, and the blood sodium levels in my blood would just bottom out. That would cause hospitalization. So then I'm like, well, beer's the problem, not me. It's the beer. So then I'd switch to hard liquor. And I mean, it was just this same story over and over and over. And yet I chose not to identify the pattern. And so I would have medical doctor appointments, follow up from hospitalizations. And I would lie. I would say, oh, no, I stopped drinking once, I got out of the hospital. I stopped. That wasn't true. And I, at no point during those days did I share how much I was drinking because of the shame and all the things. And, I had an OWI in April of 2019. Thank God nobody was injured. It totaled my car. I spent most of an evening in jail. And yet that was not the final rock bottom.
Wow. It seems to me like you thought if you could just manage this correctly, like alcohol wasn't really a problem. It was kind of like you weren't managing it appropriately. And once you figured out the right formula, that would be okay versus
Right?
letting it go.
Yeah. Because what we see on TV and social media, I wasn't active on social media. It wasn't quite the fervor that it was these days. But, my perception was that everybody else can manage their drinking.
This was probably your fault. You just figure this out.
Yeah, I'm just not doing it right. I'm not drinking the right stuff. There was never enough. I could never drink enough to get rid of what I needed to process through. And that's, the mental health. It wasn't until after I got sober this time in 2020, February of 2020, that talking with my psychiatrist, he was able to very clearly connect the dots for me that, mental health exacerbated the alcohol use disorder, which exacerbated them. So it was, again, was just this cycle over and over.
Yeah. And you were not alone checking that you just drink socially, probably about 3 drinks a week to your doctor. Every single person listening to this podcast has done that.
Sure.
What was your support system during that time? Did you have one?
That was very interesting. February 2020, I get out of the hospital for the final time, and I knew I was going to do something differently. That it was made clear to me in the hospital that how close I was to not being around anymore, and that the next time there was absolutely zero guarantees. And that kind of, I don't know, a wake-up call per se, or messaging I needed to hear at that time. And so I entered an intensive outpatient program, an IOP. I had lost my job because of performance-related issues due to alcohol use disorder. And so I was all in. I was doing 9 hours of in-person therapy and group counseling. And a lot of the messaging and the trainings and the lessons were grounded in the 12 steps. And there were other modalities that now I know are connected to, like dialectical behavioral therapy and things that kind of were interwoven. But it was probably the majority of it was oriented toward 12 steps. And it didn't feel right, but I knew I needed something, right? So I did the work. I showed up, did the homework, did the classes, all the things. 40 days later is when COVID shut everything down. And the in-person treatment, the IOP, was just paused. Because like most, how do you replicate an in-person treatment in recovery? How do you do that, without the in-person component? And so I'm like, well, isn't this interesting? Obviously, I'm isolated, as the world is isolated, shut down. I'm by myself, living alone, no job, striving like hell to stay sober. What tools do I have? what methods, what can I tap into? And I remembered the leadership challenge. And I remembered the practices, and I remembered how empowered I felt when I was leading a life of my own design. And part of what the leadership challenge experience is a values activity that gets very up close and personal. We've got a deck of cards and you sort through prioritization, and then it comes down to, here are your values. Now what? What are you going to do about these? And so as I looked at those 5 cards representing my values, it became crystal clear that I needed to engage in behaviors consistent with my values. And that would allow me to lead myself further away from alcohol. And that's been 5 years, 5-ish years. And it's been my method of self-empowered leadership ever since.
Wow. So you quit drinking for the last time. It wasn't, it was hard fought for that last time, right?
Yes.
Could have happened at any time, but you waited for like 5 hospitalizations, 1 OWI, you
Yep.
quit for the last time and you knew it. You were saving your life now. You knew you really had no other choice. I'm going to die from this, or I'm going to stop doing this.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm putting all my energy into not doing this. And I've got 9 hours of support
Yep.
professionals every single day. And then the world shuts down.
Yes.
And now you have a choice of, am I going to save myself or F it? Go back to the thing that I know. That's huge. And somehow you made the choice to keep walking out and that find some of your own tools and go back into that, dust off that toolbox that you had started to
Exactly.
learn about with this
Literally. Yeah.
that had been planted, a seed that had been planted 10 years ago. Okay, so you do the values exercise
Yep.
yourself and you recognize, I'm going to start marching to my values and I'm going to start filling my life with my values.
Yep.
What did that look like for you? And I'm a little bit curious how parenting is marching alongside some of this, being a mom and growing, healing,
Right.
trying to
Right.
figure it out.
So in 2020, my oldest son was in college. My youngest son was graduating high school. So obviously all that looked different from what, we thought it would look like. And it really meant being intentional. That's when I started looking at what are resources that complement sobriety or complement really what I saw as a holistic approach. So I started practicing mindfulness. I started practicing yoga and started kind of identifying what aligns with my energy, what makes me feel stressed, what makes me feel less stressed. I just intentionally knew that despite the separation, the isolation, that I needed to move closer to family. And of course, I had tried getting sober many, many times before, right? And so to some degree, I'm not going to speak for my parents and my kids, but I'm sure they thought, yeah, here she goes again. Wonder how long this one's going to last, right? Because that was the pattern of behavior that I exhibited previously.
Mm-hmm.
But I think then I made a decision I was going to move to a different location. It was COVID, so nobody was hiring. So that presented a challenge of what do you do? And started a consulting business at that point. And I don't remember, and I'm not sure that my boys can accurately remember like at what point they kind of were like, hey, maybe this is like for real now. But obviously, the more that I started speaking openly about my story and started trying to diminish the stigma around people who struggle with alcohol use disorder and mental health conditions, and try to uplift the normalcy of what one goes through, what one's family goes through, and that, being open about being in therapy or being in treatment or wanting to explore things other than 12-step models and wanting to be curious and wanting to learn, that those were all qualities that I embodied and needed to really do more of, to be able to continue to move forward. And so in those early days, it was kind of like, what's one thing I can do today to keep me more aligned with my values? I just started a gratitude journal and writing down things at night that I was grateful for, that, what did I do today that allowed me to demonstrate my value of love? And so again, trying to keep it a living, breathing part of not just this, esoterical, blah, blah, abstract thing, but really practical. What am I doing today? What do my behaviors demonstrate today that are consistent with my values?
Yeah, you're very loud and proud in recovery, and that's so necessary and so great. And it seems like you were almost that way from the get-go. Like you are pretty early on, fairly quickly decided, I'm out loud about this, right? I'm going to, reducing the stigma is me talking out loud. And not everybody feels that way. It can take people a longer time or ever to get that way. So we need people like you with a voice out there.
Well, thank you. And really, we need people like the communities who uplift people who share their stories, right? And that I was 30 days sober when I posted on Facebook that, where I was in my journey. And of course, I'm like cringing, wondering what I'm going to see in the comments. And it was just overwhelmingly loving and supportive and encouraging. And not long after that, I decided to post on LinkedIn. And friends and, business colleagues are like, oh my God, no, that's like business suicide. And I'm thinking, no, because if I'm authentic, then I'm not going to keep this hidden. That only perpetuates the shame and the guilt and the judgment that I'm really trying to advocate against. Totally. So I posted on LinkedIn. I don't even remember what the message was, but it was something related to, leading. I tied it in with leadership and leading myself away from alcohol. So it had kind of a more professional tie-in with LinkedIn. And there it was crickets at first, which was okay. It wasn't at least, what, this is LinkedIn. You shouldn't share your profession or your personal issues. And then there were others, you and Laura McCowan. I mean, Annie Grace, some of these authors and Peggy Cooney. And, there's just there were other people that I paid attention to who were like talking. And I'm like, there's more than just me. And I'm really liking that. And I think the more that we speak up, the more that we speak up on behalf of those who might be reluctant, but the more that we show that it's okay to speak up. Yeah. And you don't, we got you back. We're here. You don't need to be afraid.
Totally. So yeah, you did it at 30 days on Facebook. I did it at 1 year. So the people that I'm talking about that a little more hesitant is me. It's me.
But that's okay too. I mean, to the contrary, I would never recommend somebody, puts it out there if they're not completely ready.
Yeah. And then LinkedIn was it's funny, that's the last place I did it. And that was the hardest place to do it. And I think it goes to what we were talking about, like, don't bring your personal problems to work, or pretend that you're okay and you have it all together. For candidates at a job interview, I have a background in HR, I have a background in sales, also scared they're going to think I was a drunk this whole time, or, right? Like, that because we can put on a face when we go to work. We can show just part of ourselves. For me, I wanted people to think very highly of me, right? Worried about what people think and wanting to give a perfect image of things. So it was hard to say, no, I was struggling with something and now I'm out. And I had been let go from jobs, not drinking related, although I'm sure it didn't help me. But even early in my career, because companies closed down and stuff, a lot of it had nothing to do with me. But I carry that rejection, with my self-esteem. That was really, really hard for me. And for a high achieving person and perfectionist to feel a rejection like that got me. That still gets me. It's still something that I have to continue to work on. So I feel you, losing a job, losing a marriage, having all that, and then turning around and coming out on the other side. is truly incredible. So writing in the practicing mindfulness, your core values exercise, having a gratitude journal. This is starting to moving closer to family. Did you end up doing that?
Yep, I
Okay.
did. I moved closer to family. My oldest son graduated from college. My youngest son started college at the University of Iowa, where he played football. And so I moved closer. I moved to Iowa City so I could be active in that community, which again was a turning point of sorts, or kind of a what am I in for question mark, because I'm sober and I'm single and I'm the mom of a college football player, where you're surrounded by a game day environment that is the opposite of sober.
Yeah.
It's all things alcohol. And my fear was that I was not going to fit into the parent crowd because of, just because I didn't think I was going to fit in. And honestly, that's one of the stories I was telling myself. It was not true whatsoever. There's, so little attention when you're with and around the right people. There's so little attention paid to whether or not you're drinking or what you are or aren't drinking, that I felt included from day one. I didn't feel shunned or shamed or like, oh, you don't drink, well, you go over there with your AF beer or whatever. It was none of that. It was all very welcoming, and I'm truly grateful for how welcomed I felt, because that was a horror story I was telling in my head.
Yeah, well, I'm imagining the reason that you were is because that's how you would have viewed somebody, because that's how it is for me. It was like people that didn't drink, I used to interrogate. I was like so curious about what do they do? Who are their friends? Are they in a relationship? Who would like them if they don't drink? I don't get it. Like, even on holidays, like, what do you do? What do you do? Like, I was fascinated with it. Like, I could not understand it as a drinker. So you had your own thoughts, right?
Yep.
And that's beautiful. This is not sponsored by the Iowa Hawkeyes, by the
No.
way. What a beautiful story of inclusion and fitting in, and it doesn't matter. And there's the right people everywhere you go. And for most people, it's not a thing. They want to know you. It doesn't matter what's in your glass. And the fact that you felt that even in a game day culture, and I'm a big Big Ten fan, and I've got kids in college, and we love a game day. So, and a tailgate and all that stuff. So I totally get it. But wow, yeah, you've been able to even conquer that. This has been a huge turnaround, a very huge turnaround. So how does it relate back to this self-empowered leadership in action then? And how does it go to some of the work that you're doing? It's become your life's work, right?
It really has. And the catalyst for where I'm at today is really the sad loss of my brother-in-law at the end of January from excessive alcohol use disorder and all of the health consequences that go along with that. At the end of January, he was in the hospital in an intensive care unit, age 49, almost 5 years to the day that I was in a different ICU, same age, and he lost his life and I didn't. And I struggled with why. Not exactly. But it was more of a drive to create more survivors.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a guilt. It was a curiosity. I mean, you and I are both naturally curious individuals, and it was kind of like, why am I here? What was the secret sauce, or why?
And also, this is preventable. We know this is preventable.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So his passing really became a spark that I know there needs to be more access to multiple pathways for recovery. That's what the way onward is being developed as. It is taking the same 5 practices from the Leadership Challenge and what their work is within the self-empowered leadership framework, and adding those 5 practices to the context of recovery. So the way onward is a training curriculum for mental health and recovery practitioners for them to be able to have a new pathway to be able to help guide individuals in navigating recovery as a personal leadership challenge. And that teaches self-empowered leadership skills that, yes, can be helpful in recovery, and yes, can be even more helpful in leading a successful life. And that's the emphasis, is how do we embed leadership skills that are practical, that have nothing to do, not that they don't have anything to do with the workplace, but have more to do with who and how am I leading myself so that I can lead my family, lead my organization, lead my team, lead everyone around me more effectively, especially if I'm struggling with a behavior that is unhealthy.
Yeah, I hear you. So that's even more like we have to talk about this because people are dying from this. We can't pretend it's not happening.
And when I knew that,
to talk about it now.
Yeah, I knew that alcohol kills people, but it wasn't until I started looking at the statistics from SAMHSA that I knew how staggering they were. 383 people every single day in the United States die from excessive alcohol consumption. 383 people. And if a program, if a curriculum that we're developing can save one person, I need to be the one to put it out there. And thankfully, I have a team of friends helping me do that.
Yeah, and addiction affects 2/3 of American families. So it's you or somebody you know. It's all of us.
Yes.
We can't pretend like it's not happening. That resonates so much. And I will just tell you, getting sober taught me how to do everything.
Yes.
For me, removing alcohol, ditching the drink, that taught me everything I needed to know. So that taught me how to run a business. That taught me how to start a business. That taught me how to parent, how to be in a relationship, how to be a friend, how to be it taught me how to do everything. It's not separate from work. My life and my work are not separate. They're the same. And the skills and the tools that I had to learn to not go to my very familiar coping mechanism. The only thing I knew, and I had my first drink at 12, so I didn't wait till 40 or whatever. It had been long ingrained in me to choose something different over and over again and start to have my own awakening and create a new life for myself. That was flexing all the muscles that I would need for absolutely everything else. And I know you feel that too. So can you tell us a little bit about the Way Onward? Share with us what it is, what these principles are, what the 5 things are.
5 practices. It's rooted in the 5 practices of exemplary leadership from the Leadership Challenge. The first is Model the Way, which looks at values and behaviors. The second practice is Inspire a Shared Vision, which really is, what is this new life going to look like? What are the stories that I'm telling myself? What are the limiting beliefs that I need to get rid of so that I can see what an alcohol-free life is going to look like for me? The third is Challenge the Process, which there's a lot of that going on when we're establishing new habits, new patterns, new decision-making processes. That is one where we are able to accept failure as a learning experience and not let it be a complete setback, but let it be a step forward. The fourth is Enable others to act. And so it's taking our own empowerment and sharing that outward, and whether that's through building communities or hosting discussion groups, it differs by individual what enabling others to act looks like. That practice also has a lot to do with trusting others because we've built a trust within ourselves. And that goes back to that self-empowerment. The 5th practice is Encourage the Heart. Of all the 5 practices, Encourage the Heart is one that not only do we do not a good enough job of for encouraging ourselves, but it's definitely an area of improvement for how we continue to cheer others along. How do we celebrate small wins and not just wait for those major milestones How do we celebrate at the end of every day that, hey, you did one thing today that was just right on with your values? How do we incorporate more of those small wins as moments and reasons to celebrate? So those are the 5 practices. And within each of those practices, we create within the curriculum learning objectives and then methodologies for really embedding those into recovery approaches. So from my perspective, it includes both therapeutic dialogue as well as mindful movement, guided meditations, a lot of traditional learning kind of methods, but also some more holistic mindfulness techniques as well.
Practical strategies and then a little woo, it sounds like,
Yep.
in the best way. If someone is stuck in a cycle of self-doubt or fear, what is one action that they can take to shift their mindset?
I really encourage them to start with their values. There are numerous resources online. Brene Brown has a list of values on her website with some tools. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, has some resources. So even if you don't have the deck of values cards, or you just want something to kind of get yourself thinking, it's identifying your values and then mapping those to behaviors. Sometimes we do the values and then it's like, cool, I've got these values. The most important part is, what are you going to do that keeps you aligned and consistent with your values? And that's where values mapping can come in, and thinking about, okay, I have the value of connection. Am I going to text 3 friends every day? Am I going to schedule a lunch with a buddy once a month? What literally does that look like? And then start building your calendar accordingly.
Yeah, as a coach, that resonates. Some actual accountability, action steps, goals, specific, measurable, relevant, all that stuff. Yes. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Because it's not enough to just say, oh, these are my values. I value connection. So I sit in my house and watch TV.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you have to do something about it.
Yep.
If you could leave our listeners with just one message about self-empowered leadership, what would that be?
Leadership is an inner journey. And we cannot truly relate effectively with other people until we learn to regulate within ourselves.
And that's always what you went to alcohol for anyways, was self-soothing and regulation and sane, right? Because we're not really taught ways to do that. So yeah, we can't fully connect with others until we can fully connect with ourselves. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Anything else?
Wow, there's so much, right? I mean, there's layers upon layers upon layers of our stories, but truly gratitude that I am able to find people like you, and our community continues to grow and expand as people start identifying places in their lives where they can more effectively lead themselves. And then that leads them further away from unhealthy behaviors and toward an authentic and designed life based on what they expect of themselves, and not necessarily old expectations that they carry from other people.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be connected with you. And it's because you've been loud and proud. And I got to be honest, you are such a bright light, Angie, that it surprises me that you spent a decade in the dark. Like, I just don't see it. I can't see it. But maybe it's like it takes a very dark sky for a star to shine so bright, but you have come out very, very bright. And I'm grateful for the connection. And I'm going to share everything in the show notes about how people can connect with you. Do you want to talk about any other exciting projects, initiatives you're working on, how you want to be connected with? Should they go to LinkedIn? Let us know.
LinkedIn is fantastic. It gives multiple opportunities to see what I'm up to, kind of understand maybe more of my background separate from recovery, but still connected to leadership. The Way Onward will be available through both mental health and recovery professionals later, probably towards the fall of 2025. Our website will be going live in the summer of 2025. So that will be a place to connect. That will just be thewayonward.com. Meanwhile, angiechaplin.com is a great place to see, more of my story. There's some television news segments on there and other podcasts, conversations, and really questions. I'm happy to direct people, to coaches who are actively helping individuals like you kind of stay, grounded in their values and moving toward what a healthy life looks like for them.
Amazing. Thanks for everything. So nice to speak with you.
To Heather, thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Peripatia Podcast, a talk show for women. Don't forget to download my free ebook, The 12 Truths to Change Your Life. Do it for the plot. We'll see you in the next episode. Lots of love.